Welcome to the NCS Tech Talks podcast, your hub for all things tech and innovation. Get ready to discover the upcoming technologies shaping the future of businesses.
Hi everyone, my name is Wynthia Goh. I'm a senior partner at NCS, looking after NCS Next across the region, where we help customers in both public and private sectors make use of digital technology and innovation to deliver experience-led, data-driven, and cloud-powered digital transformation of their businesses and operations. This episode, we'll be discussing the latest development in generative AI and what it means for enterprise business leaders. I'm thrilled to have with me a senior leader from Microsoft as my guest to provide valuable insights on the opportunities, risks, and solutions related to generative AI in the corporate context. We will discuss real-world case studies, ethical considerations, and Microsoft's vision for the future of generative AI. Kevin, welcome to our podcast.
Wynthia, thank you so much for having me. And once again, thank you for the partnership. We're really excited about what NCS is doing with Microsoft technology with all our joint customers.
Yes, and then we do it together as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Kevin, maybe for a start, would you like to share a few words to introduce yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. I'm the Chief Partner Officer for Microsoft here in Singapore. My day job, as you can imagine, is I'm primarily responsible for our work with Microsoft's ecosystem of partners, including NCS. And I've been in Microsoft for almost 24 years. Most of it is really engaging with our ecosystem of partners, which includes systems integrators, independent software vendors, channel partners of all kinds. Relatively new in Singapore. Been here for almost 2 years. Spent the last 20 years in Seattle, where our Microsoft's corporate headquarters is at. And prior to that, I started my career at Microsoft in Malaysia, where I'm originally from.
We are really glad to have you with us today. Let's jump right in. Generative AI has certainly seized the public imagination over the last few months. Can you help us and the audience understand what is and what isn't generative AI? Is it really new? How is it different from other forms of AI?
There's certainly a ton of excitement among end users and customers about generative AI. It's one of those things whereby you probably ask your neighbors and your friends, and they're already experiencing ChatGPT. So there's naturally a lot of excitement among our common customers, both corporate and public sector, about this technology. So first of all, what is generative AI? Is really a part and subset of artificial intelligence as we know it, but is very much focused about creating and generating new content, new ideas, new solutions, new images, new assets. So we know when it comes to AI, it's very much about large data sets and large data models. In this particular case, the output of all of that work is to leverage very human-like behaviors to generate content that is useful for people. And it would look, I would say, very human-centric. This could come in the form of text, words, it could be graphic, artwork, it could be music, it could be even videos. Generative AI is really a tool that people can use to create content and write stories and even create new designs like user interfaces. And the conversations around generative AI hasn't been around for very long, but to see the kind of examples of what people have been able to create with it has been mind-blowing. So that's why we're all extremely excited about what generative AI can do. Now, to compare that to traditional AI, it's important to remember that the roots of generative AI is based on all the early days of AI research, right? All the work that we've done around deep learning, neural networks, and all the computational power makes generative AI even possible. Now, to compare that with traditional AI, which really focuses on solving very specific problems, making predictions, helping do analysis and personalization, generative AI really, the way I would describe it is it just expands the boundaries of human imagination. And all, like I mentioned earlier about the creation of content. That's why I think the opportunities here is to help customers really discover all the possibilities of what they can do with this new technology.
Many of the popular examples of the use of generative AI has been more on the consumer end, anything from kids using it to help with their homework, or a marketer writing marketing copy with generative AI, right? Now, many of the listeners on this podcast are business and corporate leaders, captains of their industry. What should they know about generative AI, and what is the relevance of generative AI to them in the context of their business?
If you think about the role of AI in business today, as we know it, right, it's very much about helping business users demystify complexity. And as we know in business, as it is in government, as it is into running the country, as it is into many corporate environments, overwhelmed with so much data, so much complexity. And really the role of AI is to synthesize all of that complexity into actionable decisions, which is what AI has been. With generative AI, if you think about what most business leaders and business users have to tackle every day, it's taking that complexity and making it productive, right? And that's effectively the challenge of most users today. There is a ton of difficult and challenging work that they have to plow through in order to be productive, whether it's creating content from scratch, it's creating sales content, creating marketing content, if it's summarizing complex documents, if it's synthesizing thousands and thousands of pages of PDFs, it's interpreting and doing research across vast amounts of different data sets. The level of complexity and content that most business users have to go through is quite challenging. Then ultimately, if you think about what the end goal is for most business users, is they want to make the best use of their time and all the talent that they have to produce the right business outcomes. But in order to do that, they have to get through so much complexity, they have to get through so much data, they have to get through an overwhelming amount of information, not all of which is relevant. And that's where AI can play a role. And so specifically generative AI can play a role in helping business users be extremely productive while optimizing on the creativity, the innovation, the ideation of their staff and their talent. So as you mentioned, there's a ton of use cases and scenarios from a consumer point of view. But similarly, in a business perspective, a lot of what we do today in the workplace, there's a certain amount of, I would say, detailed drudgery. There's a lot of very unproductive work that can be improved with the use of AI.
So are there problems that generative AI are more well suited for?
So generative AI is perfect in situations whereby we want to kind of help the end user respond and create content, right? So the basic premise at the very end of the day is if you have to compose a newsletter, if you have to write a complex email to a customer, if you had to create code from scratch, effectively, if you are in the task of having to generate content or context in some way, leveraging some or many sources of data, that's where generative AI plays a very key role. Take, for example, if you're a software engineer and you had to write code on Python, for example, you could either start from scratch or you could leverage existing repositories of information. With the work that we've done on GitHub, for example, by incorporating a lot of the OpenAI technologies, we call it Copilot, and NCS have been leveraging technologies like this, the average software developer is able to accelerate their productivity by being able to jump straight into the problems that they want to solve, into the code they want to create. And generative AI is able to accelerate that. As opposed to starting from a blank screen, they're able to get productive, get closer to the objective they want to create. So in essence, if you're trying to create content, code, or context in any particular way, generative AI really helps users, whether they're a software engineer, whether they're a business analyst, or even any particular employee, get to their business objective as fast as possible.
Certainly at NCS, we have been testing and using these generative AI tools as well, as we try to do this not just within our teams, but as we start to engage with customers to help them understand how these generative AI tools and solutions is going to change and transform which aspect of how they operate and how it can support their business. So when you look in your role across at all the different enterprises and what they are trying to do you see any major enterprise use cases emerging that you expect will become widely adopted across industries?
Absolutely. One of the common challenges that most enterprises have, and you could argue that this happens both in the public and private sector, is to be able to demystify, leverage, and synthesize very large amounts of data into very productive content. Which is why I think in the areas of knowledge management, for example, will probably be one of the most common and consistent scenarios. For example, like if legal firms, which typically deals with vast amounts of case information, data that's stored in a variety of different sources, it could be print, it could be paper, it could be PDF files, being able to summarize that content and synthesize that into very actionable data is one first step. And being able to leverage natural language, to be able to have a conversation with this information and through a set of prompts, being able to produce content. I would argue that in any enterprise, most enterprises would have that major challenge to resolve for, and that would be one of the most and first common scenarios to do that. One of the things that we've seen is in the areas of government, for example, whereby be able to support the community to be able to synthesize sentiments from vast amounts of public data and translate that into actionable and synthesizable data. There's one way that a lot of agencies will be using that to leverage. And one of the scenarios that's been proposed to us before is like in the area of Parliament, when they prepare for debates and discussions, there's a significant amount of preparation that goes into those sessions to be able to prepare and do research. That's an area where generative AI can play an important role, helping organizations of any shape and size be a whole lot more productive.
So, Kevin, I think you raised points here about how in an enterprise scenario, whether it's a large enterprise or a public sector organization, they are very often trying to execute use cases that leverages their internal content, their own enterprise content and data. So compared to consumer generative AI use cases for enterprises, what are some unique challenges that they face, and what are the things that they have to consider when they think about what should be their strategy and how should they be using generative AI solutions?
Like any advanced and revolutionary technology, there is tons of areas of potential misuse, and there's a lot of considerations a lot of business leaders need to have before really truly adopting generative AI in a mainstream fashion. So first of all, the fundamental areas is data accuracy. Right, there's a new term in the world of generative AI, which is in the realm of data accuracy, to ensure that your system is not hallucinating data.
Don't you love that word? I mean, AI hallucination is so euphemistic for AI giving you the wrong answer.
Yeah, and here's the key point. They're giving you the wrong answer in such a convincing and professional way that most users who read it would not even think to check the data for accuracy. And that's one of the first concerns you should have, and any user should have, that while the output may look great from a presentation, from a grammar, from a structure point of view, but the data might be completely inaccurate. So those are one of the areas that many enterprise customers who are considering to adopt generative AI need to put in systems, need to put in processes to ensure that the accuracy of the data is there. The second area of concern is obviously notions of governance, of privacy, of risk. And those are the things that many leaders would need to consider when they introduce AI and put it in the hands of their end users. What's the level of governance and structure that they have to make sure those processes are in place, whether the data is accurate, whether there is no infringement of any copyright or privacy elements in there, especially when you start dealing with confidential data, to make sure that you have internal processes to manage that. All those considerations have to be taken very seriously when you think about generative AI in the mainstream organization.
NCS and Microsoft have had a really strong partnership across areas such as cloud, data and AI, business applications, and modern work with both public and private sector clients, not just in Singapore, but across Asia. And we've both been helping a lot of enterprise clients navigate through what they can and cannot be doing with generative AI and how may generative AI be deployed in an enterprise scenario. You've mentioned some of the challenges and unique considerations that enterprises need to take into account. So can you share a little bit about what are the solutions Microsoft is bringing to enterprise customers with partners such as NCS?
Sure. I think one of the first fundamental areas to begin with is because generative AI is such a high potential technology with such a wide landscape of potential uses, is that NCS is really in a critical position to play its role as a trusted advisor and guide for many of our customers, whether there be corporations, large enterprises, or even the government, to help them determine the best possible use case scenarios in order to maximize and optimize its best use of this technology. I think that's the first real position that NCS can play to help prioritize, to help check, to help synthesize those use case scenarios. The second area is really in terms of solutioning those use cases into a very usable technology that is widely adopted within the enterprise itself. And that requires a level of capability and competency that we recognize and see that NCS has in your talent pool, whether it's within your data, your AI, your application development practices to help customers pilot, test, and bring those ideas into production. Now, generative AI, in Microsoft's case, is our Azure OpenAI technologies, has been incorporated into our own products, that our own first-party products that we have been introducing into our customer environments, and NCS is playing a critical role in driving that adoption. So one of the areas that we look forward to working with NCS on is an area of cybersecurity, whereby our Copilot AI technologies have been incorporated into the platform to help cybersecurity specialists more accurately, more automatically, and more predictably detect threats. And our partnership around that area is obviously will be embraced by many customers. The other area is in the area of building new AI-centric applications and helping customers embrace all those scenarios and use case scenarios we had talked about earlier to realize that within their environments and leveraging their own data. So working closely with your data and AI teams and your application development teams to deploy that, whether in the context of a chatbot or a mobile application or some other custom environment that enable that kind of natural language use case scenarios to come across for those clients. One of the things that we're doing is we're incorporating these technologies into our M365 suite and solutions itself. And NCS has been a leader in helping customers embrace that in the end user environment. So bringing generative AI into the masses as part of what they use within M365. So there's certainly a wide portfolio of methods and pathways where our customers are jointly embracing generative AI, whether it's something that we build in a custom fashion that NCS would help build out, or within some of our first-party products that we will begin to roll out over the next few months.
It sounds like certainly many interesting developments on the roadmap here with Microsoft.
Absolutely. We're incredibly excited. And because we've done this in a very public way, whereby many of our customers have gotten their hands on these technologies and they've been experimenting, recently opened up the preview to customers knocking on our door, really trying to identify those particular use case scenarios that they can best deploy generative AI on.
I mean, we've seen on one end, there are customers that are maybe testing using generative AI at a superficial level of change in terms of whether their operations or their engagement with customers. But there's certainly also a lot of customers that are interested to embed generative AI more deeply. Therefore, the output of those generative AI tools, or the intention is there to play critical roles in the operations. So now I think maybe it's a good time to talk about risk and the ethical use of generative AI. So Jeffrey Hinton, a pioneer behind many of the key developments in AI that really powers the generative AI that we are seeing today, he has expressed regrets and concerns about how AI can be misused, especially in terms of its potential to create harm as a result of how easy it is to, say, generate misinformation. How do you think enterprises should deal with such concerns, both in terms of their encounter as well as their usage of generative AI tools with customers and partners in the course of their business?
Absolutely, Wynthia. As I mentioned earlier, with any transformative technology, there's such a large avenue for potential misuse. And one of the things in the earliest days of our partnership with OpenAI, we had worked very, very hard and continually to really make significant investments in not just the ethical use of AI from a policy and technology point of view, but to specifically put in place guardrails to ensure that there's strong both policy guidelines and structure and guidance on how it can and should not be used. So as enterprise customers, environments start embracing generative AI, the consideration of security measures, things they have to do to safeguard all the valuable assets, because as generative AI has access to more and more data, what are the controls and guardrails they're putting in place to manage that? So those access controls, whether it's done through encryption, whether it is policies for monitoring data usage, whether it's putting strong policies in terms of how the content, what kind of content can be created, the sets of internal rules, putting in place infrastructure to manage all of that. Those are the things that we know many of our enterprise customers are looking for help on. And NCS really plays a critical role in helping our clients manage that risk, putting in place those guardrails, putting in place a strong level of governance to make sure that this technology is properly used.
Thanks, Kevin. So besides the technology solutions, it sounds like there's in the enterprise, what is the kind of governance and the framework they need to put in place in order to have sufficient oversight on AI ethics and risk considerations as they pursue adoption of such technology. So for example, in the framework for AI ethics and governance in Singapore, there's a very important concept about when should humans be in the loop, where should be the human oversight on AI adoption and AI initiatives. What are your thoughts about this when you look at what enterprises are starting to explore with generative AI?
That's a great question, Wynthia. I think from the very beginning, when we went down the path of generative AI in what we're doing with OpenAI, we saw this technology really applied in the context of how it can help humanity do what they do, but do it much better with much greater efficiency. So the role of humans, the role of people, the role of the professional in all of this is really still as the creative individual, the decision maker, the thought leader, the executor. But technology, in this particular case, generative AI technology plays a role in support of the person driving that particular decision. And hence, a lot of the use cases and scenarios that we have seen is really in support of removing the complexity, removing the drudgery, a lot of the difficult work that often has to happen before the creative work happens. Humans still plays a critical role in terms of the inception and the ideation and the initiation for that creative output. The hard work, the AI gets to do all of that, right? So if you had a responsibility to form and create a piece of communication that is going to reach out to a vast number of people around a variety of different topics, you could spend an inordinate amount of time doing research, synthesizing data, collecting information, starting from a blank sheet. But the role of AI is designed to help accelerate that and to remove so much of the complexity, not necessarily replace the person creating that. Wynthia, there has been a lot of talk about, will generative AI replace jobs? No doubt there will be functions that would evolve and change because of generative AI. But there will also be new areas that this technology will create. And one of the fundamental aspects for how this technology can be successfully embraced is to accurately and properly initiate it with prompts. That's why there's this whole new term called prompt engineering.
That's the immediate first new job that has been created from generative AI, prompt engineering.
Absolutely. Somebody still has to tell the computer to do something, right? Somebody still has to assemble the right instructions to guide the AI to deliver a particular output. it just does it so much better, so much more efficiently than it was ever before.
So when we look at the potential that generative AI provides and the potential disruption it may bring to existing roles and professions, when you look ahead, what is Microsoft's vision of the future and the impact of generative AI, and how can we ensure that it creates a digitally inclusive future for everyone?
I think it goes back to the fundamentals of the mission, right? The mission for Microsoft and the mission for many organizations in this particular industry that we're blessed and very privileged to be in, is using technology in support of humanity's potential, right? If I use that as the underscoring mission for why we exist, why our products and our technologies exist, is really to enable end users, customers of all kinds to do so much more and create so much value and impact in humanity and in the market. But ultimately, technology acts as that tool. So fundamentally, it's the democratization of data, using technology to remove complexity, to aid in our creative function, but to support us in removing all of the complex drudgery that we all have to go through in order to achieve that creative output. So that's why ultimately, I think with the democratization of technology, making it mainstream, and that everyone has access to that is really the power and the potential. Now, to achieve that, very often as part of the reason why we have this partnership with NCS is really to help guide and support our customers to unlock that imagination, right? They see the potential of the technology, but it's to unlock that, leverage their imagination to unlock the potential of what this technology is capable for, to really streamline that into all the different challenges that they want to solve for. I think that's the key. And that's the key that really solves for it for whether small business or a very large enterprise or even government, that the potential ways that everyone can embrace the technology is just honestly, truly the limits of one's imagination for what they can use this for. Hence, we're truly excited about what we can do together to help customers embrace this.
I couldn't agree with you more. Well, on one hand, people may think, generative AI about kids cheating at their homework. But on the other hand, that same potential exists to apply the technology to say, how can we help overloaded teachers, right? So it's all about what are the ways that we choose to apply generative AI, and its potential to do good is really dependent on us applying it to the right problems and challenges society faces.
You could not have said it better than what you just did effectively. This is truly a transformative tool in the right hands, with the right motivation and the right guardrails to handle and support all the risk that comes along with it. The potential for greatness is just unimaginable.
One last question. Tell us, what have you been using generative AI tools for?
One of the fun things that I've been using generative AI is to make things simple, to summarize large amounts of content into a variety of different formats. And what I mean by that is if I would take a large set of text, like typically like an article, I would use ChatGPT, Bing Chat to transpose that into bullet points. Sometimes I want to turn that into a set of questions, right? If I'm trying to turn that into an instructional element that I want to create. Or sometimes for fun, I would like to use the translation engines that comes with that to turn that into a different language. So I've been experimenting in using this to write content myself. I think we all aspire to write more, but sometimes the challenge, the drudgery of doing that prevents us from doing so. I think ChatGPT really unlocks that potential for us to start creating more content.
Did you try to pit yourself against generative AI tools and see who's better?
I think generative AI ChatGPT would win, just based on the potential of what I've seen. So much of new human knowledge, and the fascinating thing is it just gets better and better every day. And based upon the rate of progression that we've seen, it's just quite exciting to see what it could be like even within the next few months.
With that, thank you, Kevin, for taking us through the world of generative AI. We really appreciate your candid views and sharing.
Thank you for tuning in to Tech Thoughts. Be sure to hit the subscribe button on our podcast channel so you never miss out on the latest and greatest insights from industry leaders and experts. We look forward to welcoming you back for our next episode. Till then, stay inspired and keep innovating.